Good morning, everybody. My name is Stanley, and along with my wife, Jen, we are the Crumbs in the Philippines. We're here this morning in Lipa City, Batangas, and we're going to talk about something near and dear to everyone's heart, their hard-earned money. Going to tell you some different ways, tricks, tips, etc. on how to get your money to the Philippines and get the maximum exchange rate possible whenever you do so. So that's what we're going to talk about. Hang with us and we'll see you on the other side. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, especially you guys that have subscribed to the channel. We really appreciate it. For those of you that are watching that maybe have not subscribed, just please consider doing that if this type of content is something that you like to see and hear. So, financial matters, moving to the Philippines as an expat. This was one of the topics that was right at the top of my list for research whenever I decided to come here. I knew it was something that I needed to take care of. There'd be certain parts of it that needed, or that would be easier to do while I was still in the USA before I came here. You could still do all these things after moving to the Philippines, but you'd save yourself a lot of hassle and grief and headache by doing these things before leaving the USA. And the first one is to make sure that you have a reliable bank account in the USA, preferably more than one bank account. I have two, and I'll tell you about those when I talk later in the video about what I personally do to move money around while I'm here in the Philippines. So, I mean, if you really want to figure out how to get the maximum amount of pesos per dollar, hang around to the end, and I'll tell you what I do, and it gets me very near within just pennies of the fair market exchange rate that's advertised every day internationally. I get almost exactly that through any bank here in the Philippines. So once you have your banks established in the USA, you have to start thinking about how you're going to transfer money to the Philippines. You have several options available. You can do bank-to-bank transfers, which is actually going to require you to have a bank account in the Philippines as well. So that's not going to be something that you're going to want to do until after you're established here. It's not that hard to set up a bank account in the Philippines. Each bank varies in the requirements and the services they offer. There's a lot of banks here. Jen and I bank with BDO or Banco de Oro, and she opened the account while I was still in the USA, and we like dry ran some exchanges or transfers from the US to there before I ever made it here. But once you're here, you can establish a bank account at any of the banks where you live in the Philippines, and 90% of them will allow you to have either a US dollar account, a Philippine peso account, or you can have both accounts to do that. It's what is your preference and what's going to get you the best exchange rate, and we'll talk about that as we go. So another thing to think about when you're transferring money to the Philippines is, am I going to pick the money up at a location in cash? Because that is one of the options available with all of the money transfer organizations like Western Union, Zoom, Remitly, World Remit. All of those places will allow you to pick up money in cash at your location in the Philippines. And then there are quite a few locations where you can pick cash up. That's not an option that I use. I just don't feel comfortable picking up large cash amounts and walking away with them. I just have a tendency to not want to do that. But if that is an option that you're going to try, just always pick a location to pick up your money that's inside of a shopping mall or shopping center, or at a bank, a place where there's good security, well lit, It, just don't be going to these places that are in the outer neighborhoods where you don't feel comfortable. Trust me, you don't want to have people see you picking up money in some of these neighborhoods. And we've already talked about bank to bank transfers, and just talk to your bank in the States, and they'll explain to you what their process is for doing international bank transfers. Some of them will charge you a lot of money. Some of them won't charge anything at all for making a transfer, but they'll hit you on the exchange rate. It's just a matter of your own personal preference. What do you feel comfortable doing? I mean, just talk to your bank in the States, set up your bank account in the Philippines, and then you're pretty much ready to rock and roll with bank transfers. If you're going to use like any of the companies, Western Union, Remitly, Zoom, those types of companies, they're gonna hit you in some way or another on the exchange rate. Some of them will advertise a certain exchange rate, and you have to be able to look at the calculations and figure out exactly what the exchange rate is. It's not always as advertised online, trust me. The two figures that are important to remember are the amount of money that you are actually paying the company and the amount of money that's picked up in the Philippines. Those are the two figures that matter, and that's how you figure out the actual exchange rate. I'm going to show you some examples of that here with some slides, so you can see that what they say is not always what you're getting. They play with the formulas and the numbers and the wording to try and confuse you into thinking you're getting a really good exchange rate, when in fact you're actually getting not that great of an exchange rate. Some of them are faster than others. Some are companies that you might have used as a kid or in your younger years. Like I know I was always partial to Western Union, having used it back in my days when I was in the military, and I would have money transferred between myself and my parents back and forth. It was just something I was comfortable using, but these days it's not always the cheapest or the best option, Western Union. There are a lot of companies online that offer the services, and most of them are reputable. But just make sure you know what you're doing, because you definitely don't want to put your money in the hands of somebody, and the end of the day you're not getting back what you're expecting to get. That's for sure. So with all that being said, I'll keep talking through the video, but I'm gonna put some slides up to show you some example calculations of what you can expect to pay. And these numbers were valid as of midnight last night, and the exchange rate on the international market was at 56.10. So those are the numbers that I'll be using, were the ones from midnight last night on all of these websites, and then the international rate, which it changes almost hourly, but we've been averaging pretty close to 56 pesos to the dollar for the last couple of weeks. So anyway, let's get on to the first slide. The parameters that we're going to be working with is a transfer amount of a nice round number of $1,000. Makes it easy for calculation purposes. How much money will be picked up or transferred on the receiving end, the advertised exchange rate, the fees charged by the company, and then after we calculate the actual exchange rate that you're getting for your money. The first company we're going to look at is Wise, formerly known as TransferWise. So the amount that will be transferred from your $1,000 is 55,203.64 pesos. That's available for cash pickup as well if you should choose that route. Their advertised exchange rate is 55.67 pesos per dollar. They charge fees of $8.42, which our actual exchange rate, when you do the math, is 55.203 pesos per dollar. That's because from your original $1,000, Y subtracts the fees so that you're actually transferring $991.58. So doing the calculations, you can see the difference between your advertised and actual exchange rate. The next company we're going to look at is Remitly. The receiver or destination bank account will receive 54,070 pesos. They have an advertised rate of 54.07. They don't charge any fees, so the actual rate you pay is what is advertised at 54.07. They're a fairly reliable company. I used them once or twice before I came to the Philippines, and I never had any problem with them whatsoever. Okay, moving right along. The next company we're going to look at is Western Union. The receiver or destination bank account will receive 55,234.5 pesos. Their advertised exchange rate is 55.23. They have fees of $8.90, but your actual exchange rate, whenever you do the math, is 54.75 because you actually pay $1,008.90 to make the transfer. The next company we're going to talk about is Zoom. The amount available to the receiver or destination bank is 53,421.20. They have an advertised rate of 53.42 pesos to the dollar. Their fees are zero if you use a bank account to fund the money, but if you use a debit card to fund it, they have a fee of $4.99. So that your actual rates, whenever you do the calculations, are as advertised 53.42 or 53.16 should you use or choose to use your debit card to fund the transfer. The last company we're going to look at is called World Remit, and available to the receiver is 55,148 pesos. Their advertised exchange rate is 55.15. They have no fees, so the actual exchange rate is as advertised, 55.15. I've never used World Remit, but all of the reviews that I read online were good. I didn't see anyone that had any bad experiences. So now I'll tell you what I do to change money and get my money into the Philippines. Before I came to the Philippines, I opened a Charles Schwab checking account, which comes with an ATM, and you can also perform all of the functions that you can with any brokerage account associated with it. It does have one disadvantage that I'm going to share with you right here, and that is that you can only withdraw 50,000 pesos daily. Now, that limit is based on all of the banks in the Philippines that I've used so far, and is not really a limit that's associated with the Schwab account. But I've never had an occasion where I needed more than 50,000 pesos in any one day. And if I needed more, all you do is go in the next day and you can get 50,000 all over again. And now I'm going to share with you the advantages of having a Schwab ATM card in the Philippines and why I use it as my primary source for any financial transactions that I make here. You pay no foreign transaction fees on any transaction or ATM withdrawal. It works in all ATMs. I've used it in at least 7 different banks, and it's never been turned down. It works in every ATM, which is very convenient. If there's a long line at one ATM, you can go on to another bank's ATM and just use that one. It's very convenient. And at the end of the month, any fees that you incur while using your Charles Schwab debit card are reimbursed by the company. That's a great feature. And the banks in the Philippines, if you use their ATM machines, they make their money on fees. They don't try to make it on exchange rates or anything like that. So I'll show you a calculation at the end to what I actually pay whenever I withdraw money from the ATM. And I think you'll see the reason that I chose to use this as my source for moving money to the Philippines. You also have full brokerage account functionality from the Charles Schwab app that you download on your phone. For those of you that have investments or like to buy and sell stocks, work with futures, etc., all that stuff, you can do that from right within your account with Charles Schwab using the same app that you use to manage your checking account. Another thing that's very convenient. You can also use the bill pay feature for any debts that you still have back in the United States. We use our BDO account to pay online bills like water bill, electricity, and cable and stuff like that in the Philippines. So that's another pretty convenient feature that you have with your Schwab card if you still have bills in the US. And you always get the maximum exchange rate from ATM transactions once you factor in that you get your money back for any fees at the end of the month. And I'll show you that calculation here in just a moment so you can see what I'm talking about. So just a little disclaimer, I'm not sponsored by Charles Schwab, and I don't get any kickbacks or anything like that. It's just something that I wanted to share with everyone and maybe help somebody make a decision on their own that would help them save a little bit of money whenever they decide to come to the Philippines as well. It's worked out very nicely for me, and I hope that it helps someone in some way to make good financial decisions. Here's a quick example of how the Schwab card gets me a pretty good exchange rate every time I use it. A couple of days ago, I withdrew 3,000 pesos from an ATM from the AUS Bank. I'm not sure what that stands for, but my ATM fee for the transaction was 250 pesos. You have to take into account that individual withdrawals are limited to 10,000 pesos for most banks. Some will allow you to take out 20,000 at one time, but you can take out 10,000 5 times before you hit the limit at all of the banks that I've tried here in the Philippines. Then I went back and checked my Schwab to see how much money was deducted from my account for the transaction. It was $58.32, which gives me an exchange rate of 51.44 pesos per dollar, which is really not that great. But at the end of the month, after reimbursement, 3,000 pesos divided by $53.50 which is what I actually pay, gives me a 56.07 pesos per dollar exchange rate, which is very close to what the market value is at this time. I'm always very pleased, and I do these calculations at the end of every month, and we always get very near what the market rate is. I want to thank everybody for joining us during the video today, and hope you found some of it to be informative and maybe help you in you making your decisions and during the planning that you might have to make a move abroad somewhere. Anyway, just stay healthy, stay happy, and we'll check you on the next video.